Hey Van Heist Hedgehogs, welcome back. So we are going to be continuing our Kirigami adventure today. Now last week I introduced you to the term Kirigami, which is different from origami. Whereas origami is the art of paper folding, as in this origami bicycle that I created. Kirigami is more the art of paper cutting. That's what we were doing last week. We were cutting strips of paper, taping them together, and creating these geometric forms. Now, we're going to be doing more paper cutting this week, and we're going to be creating a pretty cool Kirigami sculpture with just one sheet of paper and some scissors. Well, if you want to take the project to the second level, it will be 2 sheets of paper. For inspiration this week, we are looking at the artwork of a Chinese paper artist named Li Hongbo. Li Hongbo is most known for creating these very, very cool and oftentimes surreal paper sculptures using just paper and glue and a lot of carving tools. These sculptures are kinetic, just like the sculptures we created last week. They are intended to be moved, and it's really only when you move them that you can see how that they are actually made out of paper and not something like stone or marble. His sculptures are a lot of fun to look at, and we are going to be looking at a few more examples of Li Hongbo's work as this week continues. So, what you're going to need this week is just some paper and a scissors, maybe a little bit of tape. But we are going to need to cut our paper into a perfect square. So part 1 of this video lesson is going to be teaching you how to do that. All right, so the Kirigami sculpture that we're creating today is quite a bit different than last week's, but it's a lot of fun to make. So you're going to need some paper, some scissors, and maybe some tape if you kind of want to take it the extra step. Now, it's important to have a square sheet of paper. Just like in origami, how many of the designs start with a square sheet of paper, we're going to be starting square today as well. If you don't have origami paper and you're not exactly sure about how to make something a perfect square, I'm going to show you a really easy trick to turn regular printer or notebook paper into a square. So to turn a piece of paper from being a rectangle into a square, I'm going to take one corner and I'm going to start folding it over, and I want this edge to line up with this edge. So when I see those two are lined up, I'm going to stop folding right about here. They're perfectly aligned. I'm going to make a fold, take my scissors, and this line right here, that's going to be my cutting line. So I'm going to carefully snip this chunk off. All right, I've got a square sheet of paper. Now, because this one's kind of big and it's hard to see the whole sheet on my video, I am going to work with my smaller sheet of dark green paper, but if you have something this size, that's totally gonna work. So you can follow along with me. Once you have your square sheet of paper, you are going to fold one corner to the opposite corner and make a crease. Now we've got a very wide triangle. I'm going to match that corner to that corner and make a crease. All right, we're going to do that just one more time. This corner to this corner. It's important to know where we're cutting. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to open it up your triangle just a little bit and notice the side where you can kind of see inside of the paper. Kind of see that little pocket we made there? That side's going to be facing downward. I'm going to set it just like this. I want to grab it by this little corner. I'm going to be starting to make cuts. We're going to be making horizontal cuts. Some from this side, some from this side, but never all the way across. Otherwise, we'd chop our triangle in half. I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to grab my triangle from the bottom, and I'm going to carefully make a horizontal cut that almost makes it to the edge, but doesn't. I can even go a little bit further, I bet. Okay, didn't quite get to the edge. Now, we're gonna be alternating. You could flip it over and make your next cut going this way and almost make it to the edge. But I think what I'm gonna do is make a cut, then I'm gonna kind of like skip a space and make another cut. So maybe like a ½ inch in between my cuts. It's important to pinch onto your triangle really hard while you do this because you don't want things shifting. All right, see, all of my cuts, I guess these are vertical cuts, are going this way, but none of them reach the edge. Now I'm gonna rotate my triangle, and I'm gonna make cuts going the other way, in between the cuts that I just made, in the same fashion. Cut across, almost get to the edge, but stop. All right, so we have something that almost looks like a zigzag design happening. Now it's time to carefully open up our triangle. Let's get it back to being that square. You're gonna have to do this very delicately because this is a fragile work of art right now. Okay, so now we have something that kind of reminds us of one of those wintertime paper snowflakes, but there's not really any variations along the edge. The magic of this Kirigami sculpture comes from when we turn it on its side. I'm gonna pinch that little tip right there, right in the center, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab onto maybe one or two of these edges and watch what happens when I start to stretch my paper. Something really cool is gonna happen. Not too hard. My sculpture is all of a sudden sort of appearing. Now this is less like a square sheet of paper and more like, I don't know, like a net or a string. I'm gonna spend some time just kind of like flexing these little fibers apart. Maybe I'll put my hand in there and kind of stretch this over my hand. Now you're gonna wanna be really careful when you do this because these things are so fragile. If you pull too hard, it's definitely going to rip. But if you want to really complete this project, here's what I'm gonna have you do. Complete all of the steps, and you're gonna make another one of these. And we're actually gonna put the two together. So if you want to stop the video here, go back to the beginning to learn how to make this again. You're gonna need two of these in order to fully complete the project. All right, so I finished my other one. This time I used a light green. This one turned out pretty cool as well. We've got these, just as the other one, it's got this flexibility going to it. It's interesting because we're not used to having paper stretch, but just like the sculptures by Lee Hongbo, even when things are made out of paper, they still have the ability to stretch and work in ways that we don't normally think about with paper. It's kind of like these Post-it notes that I bet some of you have seen before. These Post-its come in this nice little stack, but when you pull them apart, you can see that there's like hundreds of them, and they all kind of have this accordion book connection. That's very similar to how the work of Lee Hongbo works. And it's kind of similar to how our paper sculptures are working this week. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna take both of my sculptures, and I'm going to connect them. Okay, I'm going to carefully put the square corners together, and I'm gonna add some tape to kind of connect these edges. Wow, that's so cool. Now that my corners are attached, I get double the stretch length that I had before. But I think I'm gonna hang mine up using some strings. Here I've got just a little bit of yarn. I'm going to thread this yarn maybe through some of the holes near the very top. Let's see if I can get it through this one. I think I'm gonna put these two together, wrap them both around my finger, and then put them through that little loop. All right, now I can cut off that extra bit. I'm gonna find a cool place to hang this, and then I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. Okay, check it out. There is my Kirigami hanging sculpture creation. If you're finding that yours is a little bit too tight, you can put something in the bottom. I have a marble right here. I'm gonna try to put that inside. All right, check it out. Do you see the marble in there? But now my sculpture is stretched out a bunch more. I wonder what it looks like when it spins. All right, so that is how you make a Kirigami kinetic sculpture that can hang from, I don't know, somewhere. And we really only used 2 sheets of paper for this project, some scissors and a little bit of tape. It's a lot of fun to play with, but remember, if you tug too hard, this thing will break. Post a picture or a video of your Kirigami creation, and we will take a look at what we made next week at Zoom. Thanks so much for watching, and have a great week.